I'm asking a really cheesy question here. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And this isn't for senior year 17-year-old Isaiah. This is for senior year 17-year-old, same type of situation as Isaiah. Right. If you can go back and give yourself a message from high school going into college, what would that message look like?
It would be, this sounds kind of counterintuitive, but I think it would be don't take it so seriously. The two things I learned were about myself and was school wasn't for me at the time. It just really wasn't. I was not at the place in my life where I wanted to get up and go to school all day long and go to these classes that I was gonna have to pay attention to anyway, and just sit in a chair and listen to somebody talk for 8 hours a day. I didn't want to do it, and I wasn't going to, because I am very bullheaded. I'm very stubborn. If I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. So I didn't, and I should have been more okay with myself doing that. But I also think part of the reason I didn't want to get up and go was because I did take it so seriously, and I kind of wanted to stick it to whatever that voice was that was telling me, "Hey, you need to get up and go to class. You need to do this. This is why you're here. You need to get it done." And I wanted to say, "No, screw you. I'm gonna do whatever I want because I'm here because of me, and I get the choice. It's my choice to go to class." Right? And it was so serious in my head like that. And if I would have just said, "Hey, at the end of the day, you're here because you want to be here," or one, make sure you're here because you want to.
Yeah,
If you don't want to be here, don't be here.
I'll be here.
And then two, okay, now if you're here, it's because you want to be here. So make it worth it. That's what I would say is one, for the first time in history, there are as many in the history of the US, there's as many like average paying jobs that require a degree as there are ones that don't require a degree. Like, this is the first time in US history that you can starting entry level without a degree is basically the same as with a degree. Whatever different reason, there's a ton of reasons for that, but it's the truth right now. It's not great. It's not a good thing, to be
Right.
honest, but it's true. And I wouldn't have had the same opportunities if I had given myself a couple years before I went to school, but I wouldn't have wasted that opportunity. At the end of the day, I don't think I really regret not finishing school when I started it. I regret wasting the opportunity because I can go back anytime, but it's the fact that I'm never going to be able to go back at the same spot where I started. I wasted that. I I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I don't beat myself up about the governor's scholarship. I feel bad about it because I took that from somebody else. And to be honest, I probably should. I probably should feel bad about it a little bit because if if I was honest with myself, I would have said, "Hey, dude, you're not gonna do this. You're not gonna do this." So that's a lot to ask from a 17-year-old. Like,
Nobody turns that down.
yeah, and I don't mean like I should feel bad because like I should beat myself up about it. I think I should feel bad because feeling bad about that means I've learned something. Like there's value in that, and the value is that I've learned who I was then, and that teaches me more about who I am now. I like I said, I think if I was just honest, I just wouldn't it wouldn't have been the time for me. And I think I wouldn't have wasted the opportunity. I would have gone back later and I wouldn't have had that regret. At the end of the day, I might regret of like, I had all this this opportunity for scholarships, you know, but I would have done the thing anyway. I would have done it without it. And then I could even more say, yeah, I did that myself. Nobody helped me. Nobody gave me this scholarship. Nobody gave me, whatever. I did it all on me. And that would have been an even better achievement. And I think it would have worked out better. I think I would have actually accomplished it. So that's what I would say, that the two things. One, make sure you're there because you want to be there. And then two, remember that you're there because you want to be there. I also think I should have joined the military out of high school. I think I actually that would have been a structure that I would have been good at the time, because I was forced into it. Like college, I wasn't forced to go to class. That was the problem. The problem was I had the choice and I knew I should have gone, but I could choose not to. So I'm going to choose not to go.
Surprises me that you say you think you should have joined the military. I didn't expect to hear that from you. Did I ever tell you about the time Matt and I went to join the Navy together?
I don't know.
I don't know if I ever said that or not. So, my best friend Matt, who later went to the Marine Corps, we're like, we should join the Navy. All right, let's go talk to the recruiter. So we went and talked to the recruiter. They looked at our scores and did some basic interview stuff, and he told me I would probably go nuclear. Now, you can always try to choose something different.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they can tell you where they're going to put you.
Yeah.
Right. And they looked at my test scores and said, you're probably going to go nuclear.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what does that mean?
Not fun.
Right. They're like, well, typically we're talking like submarine stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, so like underwater metal tube, no windows, light.
Yeah.
Coming in for days,
months, like 6 months,
like at a time, like
nonstop.
And I was like, okay, hey Matt, let's go grab a sandwich, right? And we'll come back and do this paperwork after we go grab a sandwich. And I was like, fuck this. I am not gonna get stuck in a submarine. I'm claustrophobic anyway.
Yeah.
And not like freaked out, but that would freak me out. And I was like, I couldn't deal with that. And then just kind of killed it all for me. Now there's other branches, other things I could have done, but that moment I knew that if I did go in, I wanted to be an officer.
Yeah.
Which means I needed more college, and at that time I didn't have it. Right. So if you would have joined, what do you think you would have joined?
That's so funny, because I was going to say I should have gone nuclear. That was literally the thought, was because I got a couple buddies in the Navy now, and they're like 99 on an ASVAB. You should have gone nuclear, because it's like 18 months of school, like hard school, which again, I think the fact that it is so structured and so rigid, I could have done it. It would have been like a test, like, oh, do you think you can do this? Well,
Right.
Here's some really hard shit. And I would be like, yeah, I can do it. And I would do it. And then you do 6 months on in a tiny little room, which, open water scares the shit out of me. Open water is like my biggest fear. But I also love like tubing and jet skis on the ocean and all kinds of stuff. And cruises. Even though it terrifies me, I love that. I love it. I love it. And I love the anxiety during it. Is like, it's like an adrenaline junkie kind of feeling, I guess. It's not comfortable. It's not fun, but I still enjoy it.
Because of the feeling?
Despite the feeling. I like the fact that I'm doing this even though I feel like that. It makes me feel strong. It makes me feel like more. The fact that I feel out of control here, I'm still choosing to do this. So as strongly as I feel out of control, at the end of the day, I am in control. I'm totally in the control of that situation because I'm choosing to be there.
Right. Okay.
So it's like, that stupid Fault in Our Stars thing where he like puts the cigarette in his mouth and like, but he never lights it, like whatever that cheesy crap. But like that's it. It's like this is terrifying. This is awful. This is so uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, like I chose to be here. So if I can choose to like go through all this, like I can handle it, whatever. That's how strong I am.
Okay.
And you work 6 months in a nuclear engine, you leave for 2 months, you work 6 more months, you leave for 2 months, you work six, and then at the end of 2 years, you come out of it with a degree in nuclear physics and a $250,000 a year job, and every other experience that the military teaches you that like is one of the few places you can really get those experiences. And a lot of those experiences aren't good. Don't get me wrong. Like, like there's a lot of shit that comes out of that it isn't great. One of my buddies who is in the Navy got testicular cancer from the Navy. Like the other one was like, yeah, I can't enjoy food anymore because I have to eat it so fast, because that's what you do. You sit down and you eat it. Food is fuel. Like you don't have time to enjoy food. So even if he like really wants to savor something, he eats it all in a matter of like minutes. He like can't physically bring himself to slow down and enjoy food anymore. There's a lot of not great things you get out of it, but there's also a lot of good lessons that you get taught, and there's a lot of good opportunities. They'll pay for your school after, whatever. The fact that you are a part of the military is something you can throw on your resume. There was a time where that wasn't something great. A lot of people actually shied away from ex-military for whatever reason, but like,
Right.
but that's another thing you can put on your resume that's pretty good. It shows you can complete tasks, you follow through that, all that stuff.
All directions.
Yeah. So I was gonna say like I wouldn't have. There's no version of me at that age that would have come out of high school and done it, but I kind of wish I would have. Now, I did think about the Air Force for a while, and there is definitely a version of me that would have done that. And I also wish I would have done that. And it was so stupid the reason I didn't, because I couldn't fly. I wanted to join the Air Force to fly,
But
but
because of your vision,
my eyes are
no
too
way.
bad to fly, so I couldn't fly. And I knew that there was so much more to the Air Force than flying. Like that's so much of our research is handled like exclusively through the Air Force, whether it has to do with aeronautics or not. Like there was so much more to the Air Force than just that. And I knew that, but I was just so pissed off by the fact that I couldn't fly that like I was like, oh fuck that, I'm not doing that anymore. So I think I should have. In reality, I should have probably joined the Air Force. In a perfect situation, I would have just gone to school and just done the damn thing. And then right below that, I would have gone nuclear.
Hey, yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all. It's cool. So you were talking about going away to school before you went to Europe.
Oh, like talking about going to college and stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like
okay.
we were talking about going to see some other schools around the country,
Yeah,
where you might
yeah.
end up.
Yeah.
Because you knew your scores would be good enough to go wherever.
Yeah.
Right. That wasn't going to be an issue. So you were talking about we were going to go look at Vanderbilt and a couple other schools, go to Europe, get a little homesick about the time you go to Rome.
Yeah.
Right. And come back and decide you just want to hang out or stay close to your friends, not hang out,
Yeah.
but stay close to your friends. And I'm not saying whether that choice was good or bad. However, looking back,
Mhm.
what do you feel there's a difference in your college experience if you did go away to school as far as how well you did, whether you made yourself get up and go,
Yeah.
things like that, versus staying close to your friends with that?
So this is a very weighted question because there's two outcomes here, and I really don't know which one is more likely. And I hate to say it, but I really don't know which one of these two is more likely. One, I would have buckled down because I would have had nobody, and I would have just lost myself in the work, and I would have got it done. The other one is I wouldn't have made it out. I would have been so alone that I genuinely don't know if I would have made it out. I either would have come home or not come home. At that age, that was that I don't think I've ever talked to you about that. That's what shut that down. That's why I didn't actually put any effort into going anywhere else. I was terrified. I didn't know. I was in such a terrible mental state that I knew if I left everyone that I knew and I had no safety net, I was probably gonna fall. You know?
Well, then there wasn't a choice,
No.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, like, I'm glad that you thought about it enough to say that
Mhm.
versus go and find that to be the case. I don't even want to think about that, right? I mean, neither do you,
Yeah.
obviously. As much as I don't want to think about that, this is moments like that are part of the reason I actually wanted to even start this podcast, because that conversation that we just had has gone through 9 million other kids' heads. You know, it's a lot of times it's I've got to get out of here because I don't have anything here and maybe I will there.
Mhm.
Right? For you, it wasn't that,
Yeah.
right? There, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you've ever felt like you didn't have a support system.
No. That was yeah, I never felt like that. I if there was any issue there, it was that I felt like a disappointment to that system. Not that I never had a system. I always felt supported. I just there was a lot of times where I felt and I knew it wasn't true a lot of times. A lot of the time I knew, you know, I wasn't a disappointment to you and mom and I wasn't a disappointment to anybody, but I still felt like that,
Right.
But it was never that I didn't have a support system. I never felt alone.
Right. I mean, I was the exact same way.
Yeah.
I often say that my childhood, from my perspective, was very Leave It to Beaver, which is a very old reference for people of your age, but at the time they were the ideal family, right? It was very Leave It to Beaver until it wasn't.
Yeah.
Right. There was a specific moment in time and year that our world just fucking changed.
Mhm.
Right. But up until then, from my perspective, it was okay. You have a family that loves you. You never have to worry about food on your plate or shoes on your feet or, you know, going home. You know where home is. You know, you have friends. It- None of that was an issue. So if I don't succeed at this, there's nothing to blame but
Yeah.
right. Like it's the only thing I can blame. Like no matter what it was, if I failed, that's on me.
Mm.
And that scared the shit out of me because I didn't want to let people down that were all there because they were there.
Mm.
Right. The worst fear in the world for me was to feel like I was disappointing someone else.
Mhm.
As a kid, it was my parents, and they never made me feel like a disappointment either. And then as a adult, it's my kids, right? When I look at massive difference between your generation and my generation and the generation before, as far as like mental health conversations, right? I I don't think that in high school I would have ever said I had anxiety or depression. Looking back, did I deal with some of that stuff? Absolutely. Did I know really what it was? No. When's the first time you remember ever dealing with like depression or anxiety? Because let's look at it from an outside perspective or try to, right? Which
Mhm.
we're both having different perspective that's
Mhm.
very up close. From an outside perspective, supportive family, definitely some chaos in there. Your mom and I have dealt with our own issues and you and Justice especially right there for some of that in a very pivotal time in your youth,
Uh,
right? Where shit wasn't great. But the question of whether mom and dad ever loved me, that wasn't an issue,
right.
right? Didn't stress over school necessarily because you didn't really have to.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying you didn't stress over school, but as far as the academics as
Yeah.
much,
Yeah.
that part of it. Like some kids stress over school in the same ways you would, plus how do I even get through the test
Yeah,
tomorrow?
they're worried about performance,
Right.
whereas I never really had to deal with that.
That wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Um Friends, you had friends,
Oh yeah.
right?
Right.
Where do you feel like all of a sudden you were like, or could you see it at that moment?
So is the question, looking back, what can you recognize as this?
Yeah.
Or in the moment, when did it click that that's what it was?
In the moment, when did it click?
In the moment, I, I don't know if there was really an in the moment
And the reason I say that
realization.
is when you say you stopped even thinking about going away to school because that
Yeah.
realization was there.
Yeah. I don't know if I can pin down the moment where I said, "Oh, this is depression, this is anxiety." Um, I remember the first time the first time I realized that something else was going on, that I'm experiencing something that normal people aren't, but I don't know, I didn't realize what it was yet. It was 5th grade. In the mornings, we were allowed to go hang out in the gym and, like, play games and stuff before classes started during breakfast, and I had an existential crisis because I was thinking about space. I was thinking about space too much, and the for those of you who haven't ever sat there and thought about space, don't do it. It sucks. 'Cause I had already, by the time I was in 5th grade, I think I had already been disillusioned with religion, not necessarily spirituality, but religion, right? Like I had already kinda given up on the church, which is kind of crazy. I mean, I was in 5th grade, you know?
Right.
I was 10, 11 years old, and I'd already, like, given up on the church. It was pretty cynical. I think that came from when I moved to Eureka. I got a lot of older friends, and so I was 11 years old, but I had a lot of friends who were 13, 14, some 15-year-olds who were already angsty and going through that rebellious stage, and, I never let them, like, necessarily influence, like, like, they influenced my thoughts, they influenced my perspective, but I don't think they ever influenced, like, my actions really. Like, I wasn't really one to give in to peer pressure. If I was doing something, it was because I wanted to do it, you know? Like, I've always been stubborn, so but they influenced my perspective a lot, and so I was already disillusioned with, like, religion. I didn't know where I was spiritually, still don't, but, like, was completely, at the time, it was really hard to separate disillusionment with religion and spirituality.
Right.
Like, I thought, "Oh, I don't believe in the church, so I don't believe in God or an afterlife," or whatever that is, right?
Right. 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 Right.
There were I was not yet at the point where I could separate those 2 concepts. And so, I felt very small just because of that, right? Just because, like, I wasn't if I didn't believe in the church and then I didn't believe in God, so I didn't believe in heaven, I didn't believe in an afterlife, and there's just a non-stop, unending, infinite expanse of just nothingness surrounding us. How infinitesimally small am I?
Right.
And how do I how do I matter beside, like, I never thought that I didn't matter to you guys. I never thought I didn't matter to people. I knew I mattered to my friends, and I knew I mattered to my family, and, uh, sometimes I struggled with whether or not I mattered to myself,
Okay.
but I never really I knew I mattered to the people around me. The problem was, how do I matter in a bigger scope? You know, like I felt like I could touch so many people around me, but it would never be enough because there's just so much, you know, like there's so many people that I will never interact with. And then on top of that, there's this space that I can just zoom out and zoom out and zoom out until this earth that is already so big is just nothingness. And like I felt I had a I think that's the first time I can like pin down a panic attack. Was I was just thinking about space in that gym and I had this crisis of like what does in the grand scheme of things I am so so small.
Right. So how can it matter?
Yeah.
And you said that was like 5th grade?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Now I think that was anxiety. I don't think it hadn't gotten to depression yet. I definitely think the anxiety came first.
Okay.
I think the depression came from the anxiety. I don't think it's the other way around. For a long time, I thought it was the opposite. I thought I was anxious because I was depressed, but I think that was just because uh, I had dealt with the anxiety for so long that I didn't realize how good I had already become at dealing with it. Like, I remember being really small and I would cry, and I couldn't stop myself from crying, and I had no idea why. I had no idea why I was crying, but I was just so overwhelmed in that moment, and I couldn't stop crying. You know, looking back, it was just I was just anxious. You know, I was so anxious about everything, but I've been doing that kind of my whole life.
Right.
So, you know, I learned to like that's all I knew. You know, I didn't know. It's like someone who didn't know they needed glasses until they were 18. It's like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to be able to see the individual
Right.
leaves on the tree,
Right.
right?
I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't know that you weren't supposed to be
Anxious.
anxious. You weren't supposed to be nervous about everything, you know? Which is weird that I say that because I also recognize that as a kid, like I was good at making friends. I was good at social interactions. I was good at like everybody's parents loved me. I was really good at that. But I think some of that was driven by the anxiety. I think I was so anxious about screwing it up, but I was smart enough to do it right.
Right.
I overperformed because I was like, oh, don't mess this up. Because the world would have come crashing down around me if somebody didn't like me. You know what I mean? And then eventually I think the depression came from that. It came
That makes
from,
sense.
you know,
From that overwhelming weight just all
yeah.
the time of I can't fuck this up. I'm trying to think of what year it was that I picked you up from school and you had a panic attack and took you to the ER.
I think it was my sophomore year. I'm pretty sure.
We all have these things inside us that just come out differently. But I can tell you from a parent, watching your kids struggle with those things, it doesn't matter if the whole world goes through it or not. It doesn't matter if it's normal because it fucking hurts to watch.
Yep.
You're going, what can I do different? What can I do better to ease that? Can I take that away? And in the meantime, you also know that a lot of times you can't do anything different or you're not sure. And when I remember picking you up from school and taking you to the ER because thought you were having a fucking heart attack and how scared I was for you and but I also had to not show that, which is hard, you
Mm.
know, from a parent's perspective. It's hard not to lose your shit sometimes. And like you, I can be very passionate and so I have to be very careful not to lose my shit in those situations, because if I lose my shit, I lose my shit.
Mm.
Like, there's no in between. I mean, it's this or that, you know. Looking back, when you talk to your friends, I'm curious, because you're still friends with a lot of your friends. Not
Mhm.
all of them, but a lot of them, right? And I don't know if you guys have deep conversations or not. Maybe some of them and some of them you don't. But do you find that more kids had anxiety and dealt with that stuff in high school than you knew at the time?
No, I don't think so, and I mean, but I'm not a fair person to ask that question to. I graduated with 30 kids.
Right.
We were all very close, all of us. Even, like, everybody had that every class ever has had that kid that was like, "Yeah, nobody fucks with that guy." Like, he's the one we don't like. We had that kid, and I would still eat lunch with him, like, we couldn't afford not to be super close, and it wasn't like again, I had a lot of older friends who were already exploring, like, mental health. They were already at that age where they were learning about this stuff. Like, I was friends with Arlo, who not only was he 3 years older than me, but his mom's a therapist,
Right.
and so, like, I was exposed to, like, mental health, that discussion, not just myself, but, like, the people I surrounded myself with very early, and like, some of it was healthy, some of it was actually destructive, but, like, we explored that topic very openly from a very young age. Like, one of my best friend and roommate right now, Jacob, had a very, very different experience. Like, he didn't admit until a year and a half ago that he suffers from some pretty bad depression and anxiety, right? And he would not have admitted that in school. And if you asked him that question, I'm sure it'd be the exact opposite. He would
Okay.
say, "Oh, yeah, there are so many people that I could talk to now that say, yeah, I was going through this too, but nobody would have ever known because we never had that conversation." I was fortunate enough not to be in that environment. That was always a viable conversation that was always on the table. And so I don't think anybody would surprise me with that because we've already talked about it.
Right.
That discussion was never taboo for us. There's nothing left for me to discover there. We were all very, very open about it. Myself, probably more open than others. Like, Zach definitely went through some stuff that he wasn't privy to sharing, even when I wanted him to, even when I would, like, yell at him, like, "Hey, I'm your best friend. You can talk to me about this stuff. Why aren't you talking to me about this stuff?" You know? Uh, but we were even if we didn't talk about it, like, we were aware of it. We knew what that looked like and all that stuff, so we could still recognize stuff. Like, no, I don't think anybody would I could go back and talk to anybody, and they could surprise me by saying that. Like, they've either already told me or I would have known. But it's again, it's just objectively, I'm not a good person to ask that question to. I'm a very unique
Because the
circumstance.
sample size is so
Yeah,
small, and
it just doesn't make any, and just the type of environment, like Alpena is barely bigger than Eureka's school system, but I'm sure they don't have that conversation over there. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
we just lived in a small, very open, very diverse community that allowed for that to happen.
It's crazy when you look at it that way. You take say Alpena, for example, or Berryville, or whatever, any other small, you know, less than 10,000 person population around, which
Mm.
there's a million of them, right? I can't imagine the number of kids that go through things like that aren't even able to have those conversations. As much anxiety and depression is bad for you when you're going through it, it's got to be horrible when you can't talk about it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's at the end of the day, that's the big discussion, right?
Right.
Like, that's the problem is that it's not It's not even that, like, it's not dealt with enough. We're getting to that point where, okay, now the problem is we don't have the actual help. Until very, very recently, the biggest problem is it's not even a discussion.
Right.
It's taboo to talk about, right? It's not that these people don't get the help they need. It's that they don't even know they need help, right? Or the people that could help them don't know that they need help because they can't talk about it.
Right.
There are good things and bad things about how interconnected this world has gotten, like with the internet and social media and all that stuff. But that's one of the good things. It's like there's always a community for you now. You can always find somewhere to fit in. And that's good and bad. You know, there are some communities that
Right.
we should not allow them to get together, but you know
Yeah.
you know, but there's, you know, you can, if you still live in a place that you feel like you can't talk about that with somebody else, you still always have a place to go to now.
Right.
You can get on Reddit, hashtag I'm depressed or / I'm depressed. There's your community. You know, you can find a place to talk about this stuff. So like, you know, that's been the problem. We haven't solved that issue, definitely, but I think it's gotten a lot better. And it's just gotten a lot better just because we have the resources to do it now.
Yeah. And it's not as taboo
Right.
to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right. It's not as taboo to say, I deal with this.
Yeah.
Right. So now, as an adult, right? That was high school. That was junior high school, college. What was your depression, anxiety like college age?
There was a really clear-cut moment. There were a couple clear-cut moments in high school that changed things for me. But I didn't have the knowledge or experience or wisdom to guide or figure out where that change was yet. I just knew that something was changing. I knew something had changed and like it's gonna turn into something else, but I don't know what that is yet, and I didn't know how to mold it yet, and it took a long time to do that. One of those was the bleach poisoning incident. At a soccer game, went
I was
to
just telling the story the other day.
yeah. Um, I tell this story every now and then at work, and I had a soccer game. Went to go soak in an Epsom salt bath. We played a really hard game. The tub had been cleaned out with bleach.
I cleaned the tub.
It didn't get rinsed out. I was so out of it, I didn't smell all the bleach. You reasonably, I don't blame you for this at all, reasonably assumed that I knew there was bleach in there, rinsed it out before I started the bath, but I didn't. I was just so out of it that I just plugged the tub and started the bath and ended up soaking for about an hour in bleach water and went to bed, just kind of passed out, and then I woke myself up. I was having a dream that I was still in the soccer game, and because I was a captain, I was yelling at people to get in position, and I was yelling, man on, man on, man on, watch the right, you know, whatever. And I was yelling at people to get in position, and I woke myself up because I was actually yelling. Like I was yelling in my room, and I was awake, but I continued to yell at people. Like I was still in the dream. I couldn't control, I was aware of where I was. I knew I wasn't on the soccer field, but I was still in that dream as far as like physically. Like I was still acting like I was in that dream and I couldn't stop it. So like it's like when Justice has her seizures, right? Like I'm fully aware of what's happening, but there's no stopping it. My
Right.
body's just doing what it's doing. And so I'm like yelling. And when I'm having these moments of awareness, I'm like in immense pain. From head to toe, my body is just incredible. It's like somebody had punched every square inch of my body over and over and over again. I was so out of it. I was hallucinating, obviously. I remember the feeling of my headache being that my head was this river and somebody had split the river and had grabbed it with their hands and pulled this river apart. And I could feel the separation. And it was like the water flowing down was like the pain like coming in and tearing my skull apart. It's what it felt like. And I would come in and out, and I went out. I was on the soccer field. I came up, like I came out of it again, and I was curled around your toilet in your bathroom. I had no idea how I got there.
Yeah.
And I was just screaming at you. I don't know if I was saying anything. I'm pretty
No,
sure I was
you
just
were. Well, yeah, I don't know if you're saying words, but you
Yeah.
were screaming vocally.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was just yell. I remember looking you in the eyes and just screaming at you, just like bloody murder. In that moment, seeing you look at me and seeing like that look on your face of like I don't know what the fuck's happening here. Um, I made peace with dying. Like I was like I might die here. I really thought I was gonna die. I was in so much pain and I had no idea what was happening. And I was like, this might be it. And I didn't pray, but I like made peace with the fact that, if there's an afterlife, that like, I'll go face the music there. For a long time, for years after that, I kind of struggled with that because I didn't know where that was leading. But after college, whatever, by now I finally realized that what I felt in that moment was there's something coming, and I became okay with that. I didn't know what it was, still don't. But like over the years, that's where like some of that okayness with like loving the process and the grind comes from, because I had no idea what was going on. I had played a soccer game. We might have lost. I think we did lose, but we played a hard game. I felt great about it. Like, I was sore as shit, but like it was a good game, and I felt like I did a good job. And then all of a sudden, I thought I was dying. That was it. It was a flip of a switch, and I kind of realized like there's a chance I could have died there. I
Yeah.
don't know. Like how much more bleach would it have taken?
I don't know. And I wonder if there was a reaction between the bath salts and the bleach.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, bath salts are a thing, right?
yeah,
Like abusing them. And they are major hallucinogenics
yeah,
and non a positive light. Like,
yeah,
we're not talking about psilocybin mushrooms. Like,
yeah,
it's shit. And I wonder if there was some sort of reaction with
yeah.
the two.
Because like I experienced like not a full ego death, but like when people talk about major acid trips and major psilocybin trips, and they have this ego death, like I to some extent like kind of experienced that, and it took me like, but it wasn't like a full ego death, so it took me a long time to like work that through. And so like now I feel like a lot more that like every moment matters.
Right.
um Like, yeah, I'm still infinitesimally small, and in the grand scheme of things, I'm probably not gonna make an impact that in 100 years anybody's really gonna remember. And, I could become somebody like that. I genuinely, not to brag, I genuinely think I could be written about in a book someday if I wanted to do that. But I'm also not somebody for big grand gestures. I wanna be remembered, but I don't wanna be remembered because I'm written about in a textbook. I want somebody to tell stories about me, and I want somebody to like, the biggest thing for me, I might be so infinitesimally small, but the biggest thing for me would be if somebody in 50 years told their grandkid a story about a stranger that they never got their name, and that stranger was me.
Right.
Like, they don't need to know my name. I just need to impact somebody so much that they want to tell the people they love about this interaction that I had with them. That would be the biggest achievement for me. And I think it stems from that moment.
Well, I will say there's a positive light from that moment,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
Like that's horrible way to get there.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, that's where I was gonna start. That was the point in the beginning. I hope nobody has to go through that
To
like
get there.
to get to that point. But like, that's how I got there.
right. Did it scare you for a while that it was almost like you had made peace with
Oh, it scared the shit out of me.
the prospect of dying?
Oh yeah, it scared the shit out of me because, especially with like at that time, I was going through real depression. Like, I was going through suicidal depression at the time, and so it scared me that like, oh, what if that makes it easier? But I found that it didn't, because at the same time that I made peace that I could die in that moment, I realized I didn't want to.
Right.
I didn't want it to end there. It might end there. This very well could be the end, but I hope it's not.
But I don't want that to be
Yeah,
the
like
case.
at the end of the day, like, if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen, and you know what? That's okay, because there's nothing I can do to change that. But I don't want to.
Right.
There's still so much. I realize, like, there's still so much I want to do. Like I said, I still felt so small in that moment, and I still wanted to matter in ways that I hadn't yet. And it wasn't like oh, if I go to Judgment right now, I don't think I'm gonna make it.
Right.
But it was like, I want to, up my resume a little bit, So yeah, it did scare me that maybe that would make it easier when those thoughts came around. But I found that it never did. It didn't make those thoughts easier. It actually made those thoughts harder. And honestly, it could have been like a toss of the coin, Very easily it could have gone the other way, but it didn't, which I'm very grateful for.
Well, hopefully this isn't our last conversation on here. We got into a lot, and I hope to get into more. But I love you more than anything, and I'm so proud of you and the man you're becoming every single day. And sure glad you pushed through everything that you dealt with, and I love you.
I love you too.
Suicide is the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 14 and 20 to 34, and the third leading cause for people 15 to 19. 2022 and 2023, 1 out of every 5 high school students said they had seriously considered suicide. 16% made a suicide plan, and almost 10% attempted suicide. 39.7% reported persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. That's 20% too many, 16% too many, 10% too many, and almost 40% too many. Whenever you hear youth and suicide, it should tear at your heart. I can tell you firsthand, whenever you interview your son and you hear the word suicide, it tears you apart. Pay attention. Be vigilant. Speak to your kids. Have an open line of communication. Tell them you love them every single night when you go to bed and every day when they leave. Spend more time looking at them than looking at your phone. And don't be the person who says, I wish I would have. Be the person who said, I'm glad I did. Let's get these numbers down. This is Papa Ponytail with Not Your Effing Therapist, saying hug the ones you love. Good night.